Hey guys, while I'm here at PMB having my brakes done for the Bumblebee LE, I strolled to the other side of the shop where Eric has PMB Coachwerks. What do you got going on here?
We got a lot going on here. Probably too much going on here is what we got going on. But we have, we'll show you a quick little look underneath number 41. That's the 30th car off the assembly line, factory 6. And we're also doing a sports purpose build for a customer in California. It's a phenomenal car. It's going to be amazing. So we'll show you all that goes on underneath and above to make a sports purpose GT chassis.
Nice.
Enjoy it. We call this number 41. This is 914-6 number 41. The first 10 were crash tested. So number 11 would have been the first one off the assembly line, and that makes this the 30th car off the assembly line. So you're kind of in a unique position right now. They're getting ready to do some work on the exhaust system, but you're in a unique position to see the underpinnings of a 914-6. The 30th car off the assembly line. In many ways, this is still a prototype car. There was no seam sealer. Their front fenders are slightly different at the door gap. So this is a pretty unique car that I thought maybe everybody'd like to take a look at. So
cool.
Starting at the front, this car now has a GT. This was a Troutman car. Let's kind of back up to that. So Troutman put together oil coolers and oil thermostats and oil systems for early vintage Porsche 911s, etc. Troutman, very well known for the Troutman pickup trucks for the 914s. But this was one of their cars, and so it retains some of the Troutman features. So you'll see, if you're astute to 914-6 GT oil coolers and things like that, this is a little different. This is a Troutman version. They did a really good job welding in a factory style oil cooler assembly here. So here we've got the oil cooler up front and the GT bumper cut out in the factory chrome bumper. So we actually cut it out and re-chromed the bumper so it matches the GT lower valance. Okay. As we move on, kind of move in and you can see the early style S calipers, which came on this car. So these are early S calipers, clear, anodized, very early ones. So they're what would have come on the car. Bilstein, otherwise pretty much stock there. All the suspension has new bushings throughout. So,
What bushings do you use?
This one here, you can tell with the nozzle here, the grease nozzle, the grease circ. These are the elephant polybronze bushings in this car. That's what the customer wanted put in the car. We'll use anything from the factory rubber style bushings to these bushings here, but these were spec'd out by the customer to be elephant polybronze bushings. So you can see also, if you can get up in here, this is quite unique. This is a unique sway bar that came on this car. So this bar was put together, and you'll find it on some of the other sites, but it's one of the early GT bars that they had. So it's a 19 millimeter bar and has some adjustable Heim links. And that's unique to this car. Here you can see the bottom end of the car. One of the things that you'll notice potentially, we'll see how it turns out in video, you can see some of the yellow overspray on the tan bottom. So we use the Worth undercoating, and then we used a painting dolly that's the same height as the factory one. And when they would paint it, they would reach underneath and they would get the gun basically up to a certain height, and that's where you'll see the overspray coming in and hitting certain areas on the side of the body. So we've even gone to that detail where we've detailed the overspray on the bottom of the car on the tan undercoating.
It shows really well. You can see it.
Good.
Clearly.
That's kind of a unique little feature. This car has been upgraded a little bit. So he has a 3-liter PMO carbed motor in it with 3.2 heads, but it's a 3-liter motor. And next, because it's such a big motor and these factory heat exchangers are not really, here we have a spot that we have a lot of back pressure built up in here. So we're going to be taking this out here and running 2 3/4 all the way from here all the way back in. So we're going to eliminate the exhaust restriction on that. So that's why it's up in the air here, so we can get the exhaust done. He'll also have a 9/14/6 flared valance put on the back, and then these pipes are going to be adjusted so that they exit out the exact 9/14/6 locations, but on 2 sides instead of 1. So that'll open up his exhaust, should give him, we think, roughly around 40 more horsepower.
Wow.
As we've seen on the dyno on previous cars. 3.2, we gained an easy 40 horsepower by taking the restrictions out of this smaller stock exhaust system. So basically Bilstein's all around on this car, and the Rebel Racing coilover kit. H&R springs allows us to basically dial in the exact ride height on all corners. Some other unique features you'll see here: 108 millimeter 911 CV joints, 108 millimeter flanges, and we've actually powder coated up the swayaways so that they're black, so they look like a stock 911 914/6 axle. But these are the free floating swayaways going to 108 millimeter in here. The other thing here is kind of our trademark. We have strengthened the control arms with our trademark tubes that go through. Basically, they look like the same tube that you adjust the caliper with, but by adding a couple more, we've increased the lateral rigidity by over 50%. All right, so I thought it'd be a unique opportunity for your viewers to see really what goes into a 914/6 GT tub. And you really, you wouldn't get this experience to be able to see it without the paint on or anything like that. This car, believe it or not, came to us painted, and the customer wanted us to fix a few cracks in the paint, wondering if we could do that, and we said no, because we don't know what's underneath there. Right. And luckily we all agree. Even it was a pretty penny, but even the owner agreed. Thank God we stripped it. So we ended up stripping a beautiful car. And underneath it was painted on top of a bad paint job. And the paint was literally flaking off from underneath. We found all sorts of bad metal work. We didn't put the flares on this car. These flares were put on by somebody else. Let's just say they needed some love. So, but needless to say, this is a great opportunity for you to see what goes into making a sports purpose tub. And that's really what this is. This is what we coined. This build is our sports purpose build. So this would be a car that the factory would have made if you checked off a M471 box and wanted a GT, but it will be a street car. So we've lightened up on some things, but all of the things I like to do, I like to kind of go after factory style modifications. So factory style stiffening kits, all of the, you see up front here, all of the oil cooler modifications and things like that were all done in the vein of what the factory would have done back in the day. So here we've cut out the floor for the oil cooler shroud to go in. It's going to go in and over. So the fresh air is going to come through the grill here, in across the cooler, which is going to sit here, and out the exit wound on the bottom. When we did that, when we made the cuts in the front apron and we made the cuts in the floor, you can also make the chassis a little more flexible. So we welded across a brace across there and then a shroud over that as well. So now that is all encapsulated in, and the front end is actually much stronger. Okay. Some other little unique features you see under here. We like to put the spare tire, and these are going to be collapsible spare tires. We like to put the spare tire over here. That's where the factory put it on the 916, and that's going to offset the driver's weight over here. So you've got your spare tire cocked over to the right side of the car. Also, on every build that we do, we like to put the factory fuel pump location in. So these are getting a little harder to find these days, but we can still find them, and we do the factory fuel pump location. The other thing you're seeing here, we've got the bracing put in for the hood pins. So right now the car is being metal worked and assembled so that we can disassemble it and paint it. And then you can see the hood pin pieces up here. So gives you an idea where they're going to go. These are the stainless hood pin pieces. So all that stuff has to be done before you put the car in paint, and it just makes assembly that much easier. The painted bits don't have to get repainted, etc. So it's a lot of work to assemble the car. So up front, we've got the steel flares here. We did some rust repair on the cowl section, so both cowl sections needed to be replaced. This was very detailed. If you want to go to our PMB Performance Facebook page, you can probably dig into the details. There are roughly 7 pieces of metal that join here on the A pillar of the car. So this is a critical location to repair and repair properly. A lot of people will just weld this gap shut, but you're just encapsulating the rust down there. And if you think it's not going to come back, I will guarantee you it will. So that's a repair done right, and it's a very costly repair. The flares, let's say they needed love. I mentioned that earlier. These are all pinholes that were in the flare from a previous weld job. So we had to TIG those shut. What would have happened to this car is the minute it got out in any rain or moisture, that would have come up, that would have seeped through the pinholes in the back. It would have lifted the filler that they had in there, and it would have ruined the paint job. So you can count probably roughly 50 holes per fender at least, okay? Onto the front of the car, we developed a factory GT style grille that gets bolted in. It's got the frame around it. There's the grille material up there. All that was pre-assembled with the front bumper and the valance on to make sure everything fits in there. So again, another cowl repair on this side. This one was a little less than the other, a little less in depth, but a deep cowl repair on here. So cage. Car gets a mild cage put in. The customer has elected not to put the door bars in. This is going to be a street car. So the cage is there to help stiffen the chassis and just maintain rigidity across the board. So some of the little touches that we've done here with this cage, you can see the dimple-dyed braces that go in. So this is a very thin piece of metal, which on its own would be very flimsy and really wouldn't do much. But once you put the dimple die in it, it strengthens everything. And these get welded in here, and they will be painted. This is going to have a really unique paint job. This is going to be a light ivory body in white. So we're going to do body in white using light ivory instead of white. And then it gets a special 356 blue on top of that on the body panel. So what that means is this cage will be light ivory, and these features here with the dimple die cutouts are going to really just kind of pop through the windshield on this car. So it's going to be beautiful. Going to have a sports purpose interior, custom bucket seats from Italy, and it also will have felt backing throughout. You can see we've already got the GT access panel cut out for the back there, and the GT hoops for the seat belts are already in place. Basically, again, the car gets put together before we take it apart and goes to paint. Now, this one's about a week or 2 off from going into paint. All of these things, in order for us to put these gussets in here, the dimple dyed gussets, the doors had to go on, the windows had to go in, everything had to go on, because now that windshield is set. It's not moving. So we had to make sure it was in the exact spot it needed to be in before we welded in the dimple die gussets. And this is one of your likely rust spots. A good probably 30% of the 914s you look at, there's a little bubble here starting somewhere, okay? So that's what's going on here. All the foam underneath, there's a inner body panel in here, and the factory sprayed foam up around here, and all that foam, it's kind of a neat idea, but what it does is it encapsulates moisture in there, and then it starts to rust. So we've gone in and cleaned that out. This one had this entire piece here. Again, if you look at our Facebook page on this car, you'll see this entire piece was replaced here, okay? So there was rust in here, rust in the box that held that piece on. So we got the entire jam from our friends at Restoration Design, and we just basically cut out the pieces that we need from that jam. They did a great job of producing those pieces. So,
Eric, these cars are really like rolling works of art.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because that's the way we feel about them. Each one is kind of like a palette, and it takes on a persona of its own. Kind of, it's what the owner wants, and it's how the car kind of comes together. I'd have to say, both of these cars have morphed a little bit as they were in here, but that's the way we feel about them. They're like a work of art, and when they're done, this will be a really cool sports purpose car. I think a lot of people are familiar with Larry's Gulf Blue car. That's kind of a resto mod car, with a 3.2, turn the key and it goes kind of thing. This will be more of a raw carbureted 2.5 car. All of them are different, and all of them are kind of a painting, which you can create. It's a work of art. That's the way I look at them. Some other little GT. Again, we're assembling everything, so we're going to check the fit. We're going to check the fit on the GT engine lid. We have a GT. The latch pull was taken off of here and down here, and we've incorporated the latch pull here so the pit crew can pull up the latch handle and access the engine. We always tell people it's easier if you have hellhole issues, even minor hellhole issues, which is a California thing as well. California cars do have rust. They're just minor compared to Michigan cars. And I can say that because I'm from Michigan. So we always tell people that it's less expensive and easier to replace these engine shelves than it is to try to patch them, believe it or not. It's just they fit better. It's much easier to do. It's much easier to weld in. And you'll see we didn't replace the entire piece. We just kind of went in around this area here. These pieces in the back were good here, so there's no need to go crazy and just take the whole thing out. We just took out the piece that we needed and we welded that in there. We kind of figured it'd be good to take a look at the underside of the car so you can see some of the things that go into the chassis side of making a GT. So first of all, when we get wider tires, we want to disperse that load. So what the factory did is they ran this bar up to the front firewall here off of the inner suspension here. So that's been done on this car because it's obviously going to have the wider tires with the flares. The other thing that we see in these cars, we see these chassis literally rip apart, and we've seen this with 4-cylinder cars where, the chassis will rip apart, here. What the factory stiffening kit does is it transfers loads from various areas to other areas. I always like to look at a 914 like it's a ladder frame. So if you can think of an old Ford F-150 kind of ladder frame truck, you've got your longitudinals, which would be the side of the ladder, but then you also have these pieces that are the rungs of the ladder. Like on a 914, it's going to start with your rear apron, and it's going to be your transmission support, and it's going to be the rear firewall in the engine compartment. Okay, then it's going to be your firewall up here. A lot of these areas are double stiffened here, metal on either side. Your ladder moves down, and you've got more pieces up front. So that's kind of the way I like to describe a 914. And now we want to stop that ladder from twisting if we can, especially on a top-off car like a 914, dubbed the Flexi Flyer. So what the factory ended up doing was they put together these stiffening kits that strengthen up these suspension mounting points, okay? We've got this piece here strengthening it, going forward, transferring the load to the firewall. We've got this piece here which wraps. It's a very difficult piece to weld in. This factory stiffening piece wraps underneath the suspension console here and here, spreads the load here. More load is transferred from here, and guess where we're going? We're going right here to this ladder piece here, and where our shock goes up in here, we're transferring loads from here all the way back here to that transmission suspension piece, the transmission ladder piece, okay? And then we move forward with it, and that stiffening kit, we take it, we've added a few more pieces, and we take it all the way out to the jack point. These jack points are able to be used. Everything's been checked out and put back together properly here. Here you can see a GT modification where, again, we install everything before we get ready to paint the car, and then we'll disassemble for paint. But here you can see Ben from M&B Specialties GT oil cooler lines on here. They're fantastic. They pretty much bolt right on. So body has to be cut up here to get this piece to go above and in. And then the bottom of the jack post is trimmed off here to get this piece to go under it as well. So factory GT lines on this car with the factory mounting hardware here. What else have we done here? We've got, this is a pretty common, this is a Mad Dog engine mount, but pretty common. Rich Johnson makes a really nice one. Velios is the first one that started making this style mount. This style mount incorporates two 911 engine mount supports here, and we like that. It kind of spreads the load out here. We actually like it a little better than the factory mount. So that piece is welded in, ready to go. You can see that the original 4-cylinder mounts are out, and again the factory pieces wrap around here and help strengthen that area as well. Okay, the harness is still in this car and tucked in the bag for safekeeping, and again you can see some of the things with the new engine shelf, the new battery tray, all that kind of stuff. So metal work on this car is basically done. Sam is currently buttoning up some of the doors, so the little rust spots on the bottom of the door, and Trent is working on the rockers. So we're going to do flared rocker ends on these metal rockers. We like the metal rockers because they actually fit properly, where they're going to come underneath the car, and they will bolt into the factory mounting locations here, here, and here. So we're going to use the metal rockers on this car and then flare the ends to match here. What we've done here is there's a few rust patches here that have been repaired, and Trent's going to run this through now. He's going to run it through the plenishing hammer to make sure everything is smoothed out. So he's going to smooth out all the weld areas by running it through the plenishing hammer. We'll give you a little look at that and how that works.
So this is a plenishing hammer. Basically the purpose of it is it's just like using a hammer on dolly, except it hits really, really fast and really, really close together. So this is just to help smooth this out. While welding these patches in, we have some shrinkage from the heat of welding, and this helps to just kind of massage that back into shape.
All right, see how it goes.
Get it to cooperate here. Much smoother now. So a little bit of fine tuning and it'll be ready for a little bit of body filler and ready for paint.
Some little tips up front, little tricks we've done up here. You can see the floor on this car is pretty good, other than, again, the California rust we talked about. Here we've got an RSR style sway bar brace put in the car. Probably overkill, but it's a nice little piece to have. It came with a cutout for these, but we actually like to take these pieces off and weld them back on. So this piece is TIG welded into place.
How much do you dress that?
Dress it, meaning
You just grind it down and smooth it out, or you just paint right over it?
You can do what you want to do with them, to be honest with you. But when you look at the factory stuff, and we're talking about building a factory sports purpose build, we tend to want to leave it like that a little bit. So again, this will be body in white, body in light ivory. And once that gets painted up, it'll kind of disappear, but it also kind of harkens back to the way, if you find actual factory GT pictures, which I've got one I can show you for this clip, you'll see the rosette welds were anything but beautiful. They were good, they penetrated, but you know, a lot of this stuff is just burned from the welding process. But you can see here the paint and the outline. What we do here when we do dress this, we start with a bare metal tub. Then where we sandwich pieces, we're going to do a weld through primer underneath, so it is primed underneath here. Okay. But on this car, we're probably going to leave it kind of rough like that, because that's the way the factory would have done it.
Eric, thank you so much for showing us around PMB Coachwerks. What's the wait to get one of my cars in here?
About 4 years out right now, believe it or not. So 3 to 4 years. We're trying to dwindle that down, but they're coming in faster than we can make them. So.
What if I come to work here?
5 years. Customer cars first.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for coming by.